Hi, folks. I think, yep, we are getting started. Great to see people here. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Amy Antonucci, and I am with New Hampshire Peace Action Education Fund. And I'm really thrilled to welcome you to our program for November 24th, 2025, with New Hampshire State Representative Ellen Reed. She's going to talk with us about the struggle for Palestinian freedom and the flotillas that have been trying to reach Gaza for 17 years that she has recently been a part of. First, many thanks to tonight's co-sponsors: Not in My Name, New Hampshire, Southern New Hampshire Indivisible, UCC Peace with Justice Advocates, the Palestine Education Network, Jewish Voice for Peace, Vermont, New Hampshire, American Friends Service Committee, New Hampshire, Veterans for Peace, New Hampshire, the New Hampshire Council of Churches, Youth Movement, World Fellowship Center, and 350 NH. Let's pause for a moment for an acknowledgement that we are doing our work on the traditional ancestral homelands of the Abenaki, Wabanaki, and Pennacook peoples. We want to honor with gratitude the land, the water, and the people who have been in relationship. It also is a particularly poignant moment to do that. We are coming up on Thanksgiving, or the Day of Mourning in this country. And of course, we're going to be talking about an Indigenous population of folks who are currently under attack. So we think it's important to remember our history. Quick reminder on Zoom guidelines. We love when you have your video on, but we will keep your audio muted to start with. Later on, along with the chat, we'll allow hand raising, and I'll let people one at a time unmute. So with all that said, I'm really pleased to introduce to you our speaker tonight. Representative Reed, Ellen, serves as the New Hampshire State Rep from Rockingham 10, that's Newmarket and Newfields. She is the founder of the New Hampshire House Progressive Caucus, the deputy ranking member of the House Committee on Housing, New Hampshire State lead of the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, and New Hampshire State Director for the National Foundation of Women Legislators. Ellen set sail aboard the King Julian, part of the Thousand Madleens to Gaza Flotilla, in October. She was, as far as anyone can tell, the first American elected official to participate in the humanitarian flotillas that have been trying to break Israel's illegal blockade of Gaza for 17 years. Also note that she wants it known up front that she did not make it to Gaza. Of course, none of them did. She also was not one of the folks apprehended by Israel because she had a medical issue that meant she left the boat, and when she tried to get back, was prevented from. But of course, she was part of this whole thing, and we're just thrilled to have her. I know many of you have been asking us for information, to know how she was doing when she was ill, and to know how it's going now. And of course, she reminded me, this isn't about her. It isn't about making her a hero. It's about what the Palestinians are going through and how we can show up for them. And she showed up in a major way, and we're really thrilled to have her. And Ellen, I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us about it.
Thank you. And thank you for that introduction and disclaimer. I really felt that it was necessary because so many people have kind of been excited to talk to me knowing that happened. And, I do feel, I felt there was a lot of anger about not being able to get back on board. And when I got sick, and I felt a lot of like I was abandoning my comrades on the boat. But thank you for the introduction. So I guess I'll maybe just tell people who I am. I've been in the State House for almost 10 years now. I founded the New Hampshire House Progressive Caucus. I was a lifelong advocate and politically, active, but I came from a poor family in Memphis. But I got really active after the George W. Bush years, and I actually worked for a couple nonprofits, and then got recruited to run for office. And that was the year that Trump took office, 2016, the 2016 election. So, yeah, in terms of my journey to the flotilla, like so many of us, I am guessing, I've spent the last 2 years watching videos online. And I'd always been, I guess, skeptical of the narratives in our mainstream media because I was kind of leftist upbringing. My parents were hippies. I had bosses when I was growing up that, kind of showed how unfair American media was to the Palestinians. My parents taught me that Jimmy Carter was one of the best presidents in living memory, and of course he famously called the situation apartheid. So I was already skeptical, but seeing it, we've all seen images from say the Holocaust. We've seen images of genocide, but I don't know about you all, but when I was in school, the idea of genocide was almost synonymous with specifically the Nazi Holocaust of Jewish people. And so it almost seemed, even though I grew up in like the 90s and Bosnia happened and Rwanda, but it almost seemed like genocide was like this terrible thing that once upon a time, when we were not as enlightened as we are now, we participated in. But we're safe from making those mistakes now. And, so there was a distance there. And so those pictures that we all saw of actual genocide, they seemed like obviously disgusting and awful, but like a thing of the past. And this is the first genocide we are having like live streamed to each individual, right? So I've seen these videos for 2 years, and I'm extraordinarily, people call me passionate. Sometimes I get kind of angry at the description. I'm passionate on a lot of issues. I'm very active on a lot of issues, democracy reform issues, how I cut my teeth, women's issues, housing, economic justice. And a lot of those issues impact me personally, animal issues as well. But I've never sobbed the way I've cried for 2 years watching videos from Gaza. And not just the videos of, the suffering, but also the other side of it, the videos of the narratives of Israelis who've been conditioned to just hate and conditioned to support this kind of oppression and violence. And there's something about seeing that evil in real time, or, being really real, that, I don't know, I think it moves a lot of us. So, I obviously want to do what I can to help any cause I care about, but this one was moving me more than really anything had ever moved me on an emotional level. So I actually put in a genocide bill to teach an expanded genocide studies. So not only teaching the Jewish Holocaust, but the Holocaust and a number of historical genocides, and including the genocide against the Palestinian people. And one of those, to go back to what was referenced earlier, was the genocide of the Native American people, the indigenous people in North America, and what European settler colonialism did to the indigenous people here. And how I think, I don't know, being in politics, I think I might be a little bit skewed, but I think most people can acknowledge how wrong that was, and kind of maybe go around thinking that, well, they wouldn't have been one of the ones. They wouldn't have supported this killing of people whose land that they just landed on or whatever. People kind of tell themselves that if they were in that era, whether it's World War II or slavery or, before women's rights or the indigenous people or whatever, they tell themselves they would have been one of the good ones because obviously. And we know that that's not true because so many people are supporting the things that are happening today, including the ongoing genocide. And for clarity, I count the genocide of Palestinians dating back before Gaza, truly, with multiple massacres. And the intent, the definition of genocide requires intent, and the intent has always very, very clearly been there for 77 years. So that's how I see it. But my point is that I think most people would say, oh, yeah, what we did to the indigenous people in North America was awful, and yet can't connect that, obviously, that settler colonialism that intentionally is pushing out and is intentionally destroying a people and intentionally wants to, that was stated in what our forebears said, and it's stated in Israeli policy now. The intent to destroy a people is there, and it's wild to me that people can't connect that. So I put in this bill expanding genocide studies as a requirement in high school. It also taught the UN definition of genocide and the common tools of genocide, as well as the UN Declaration on Human Rights. And of course, it went nowhere, but my only opposition was, people who were pro-Israeli and Zionist. So, I mean, that's kind of telling because no one else had any problem with calling out any of the other genocides, right? So, anyway, so that was kind of I don't know what else I can do. We've already, the House being what it is, has struck down BDS law and actually passed anti-BDS law. There was very little we can do on the state level about, something that deals with international politics. And then after, a year and a half or so of watching these videos, I saw that this video come out of the Samud, and this is when the training of the people who were going to be on the Samud. And I was surprised because I didn't realize that there had been elected officials from all these different countries on flotillas. And of course that gave me the thought, because if I'm poor, if I had money, I would have donated to causes. If I had tons of followers, which I don't have, I would have, made sure that the information got out. But, all I have is this title. And I had thought previously that meant, okay, I need to pass some sort of legislation or resolution, something. But I realized that it might be more valuable just being that person. And I'm sorry if you're hearing my parrot in the background, just being that person with that title on a boat. So I signed up with the Freedom Flotilla. They contacted me and did a little interview and everything and said, when it happens, it'll be really, really fast. And so, and then a couple months later, I did get contacted by, so there's 3 flotilla organizations. If there's some other organization that's worked in the past, I'm unfamiliar, but there's 3 active right now, at least, and that's the Freedom Flotilla, the Global Samud, and now the Thousand Madleens. They're the newest one. They just started this year after last year the Madleen, which was the original boat that Greta Thunberg was on, was apprehended. So with their goal being to have a large flotilla, one day more than 50, which was the Samud active. But the Thousand Madleens had the next wave going, and so they are the ones that reached out. Freedom Flotilla gave them my name, and it was 2 weeks, we got to go. So so that's kind of how it started. So yeah, it was 2 weeks, and it was very, very secretive. For the longest time, we had a code name for the location because they weren't telling most of us where even the destination was, where we were going to gather to train. And so we had a code name for the location. It turns out we trained in Sicily. But I got on a plane, literally got the ticket like less than 48 hours before the actual plane, because I didn't even know where I was going. And went and trained for over a week at a monastery that had been donated by the padre of the monastery to us for the purposes of training. And that training was it was interesting because it really I kind of took some video and sent to a friend, and I'm like, this is like, this is communism at work, right? Because we were very, we were living very communally. Everyone, there was like lots of mutual care. There was a big focus on making sure that you're paying attention to the people around you and making sure that they're doing okay. So it's not like it was free of challenges, but it was really, really inspiring that all these people, because we were like-minded about caring about people to begin with, about having empathy for other human beings to begin with, were able to function in these closed quarters and these kind of high-stress environments so well, to the point of not just even being really aware of taking care of each other's physical needs, but also emotional needs. Everybody was checking in with everybody else. And it was really quite a nice thing. The training kind of ramped up in intensity as we were there. So when we started, we trained in nonviolent communication and kind of just like general things like that. First aid. Well, the first aid actually got to be pretty kind of gory training in and of itself, but it kind of culminated in training that was really, really intense. And it kind of brought home, because there's a tendency when you're in kind of a whirlwind of activity to not disconnect from why we were there, but maybe it's a little bit more distant because you're focused on the details. And when we did the training around, specifically around what will happen during interception, which was like the last 3 days of training, where we were instructed to bring protective gear, eye mask, face mask, ear protection for acoustic weapons. And so having to having these, they put us in dark rooms and had these lights and sounds, and we were sprayed with water. We had fake, play, I guess, IDF soldiers come in and berate us and insult us, and as harshly as they could. Tie our hands behind our back, put us on our knees. At one point, I was on my knees for like 45 minutes. I thought I was just going to pass out. Hooded us, and also like go through the process of like, if you're hooded, you can't see, and then like shooting one of your crewmates. Also, we exposed ourselves to tear gas. So, all of this was part of training. I will say that obviously nothing can really train you for the real thing, because in the moment, that it's not, that these people aren't actually going to hurt you. But I did start crying at one point when I was hooded, not because I was scared, but because when the hood went on me and my hands were tied behind my back, the only thing I could think of was the images out of Abu Ghraib and what those people must have felt. And the fact that we perpetrate this onto people. So, and that really was kind of the driving, it wasn't just, I need to do something on a personal level. It was also, I need to do something specifically as an American, because of the extra culpability America has in enabling genocide. So then we moved to the boats, and we finished our last several days of training on the boats, and stocked up for the trip. And that was the last day or so was kind of like the most, obviously real, and the kind of general tones getting really somber. And the day that we set sail, it was raining, and just kind of like, this is it. And I had already, had bouts of like, this can, no one recently has died on a flotilla, has been killed. But in 2010, Israel did kill several, I think 10 different flotilla workers. And I don't think any Americans were part of it, but it was a huge international crisis. And the idea being that Israel never really made that mistake again. They were forced to pay the families of the victims. But obviously, with the tensions ramping up, and Israel getting bolder and bolder, at that time they had just bombed a Samud ship in Tunisia. They had just bombed Yemen. It really looked like there was no line that they wouldn't cross. And so the fear of death was kind of like a really real thing. But it was surprisingly easy to mitigate that fear, because Palestinians don't get a choice. They have to live with that every day. And what kind of insult would that be if I can't get on a boat while they have to live year after year after year under constant bombing? So we set sail. There was a press conference in Catania, and the boats themselves were quite small. The Thousand Madleens, there were 9 of them. The Thousand Madleens is the newest one, and they have very small. We're able to acquire small sailboats. It is the best that they had, and I was on the smallest, and it was kind of like also the coolest. It was like the scrappy kids ship, so it was very, very tiny. It was, I think, a 29-foot little sailboat with barely enough room for anybody. And fortunately, I had the best crew I could ever hope for, mostly French. Most of the organization was French. But we took turns manning the steering, and we had like an automatic thing. It was manual steering, but there's a device that you can use to keep it on course, but you still have to keep an eye out. And then I had been really struggling quite badly, as I thought I might, with seasickness, despite me having nautical experience. My nautical experience was not prepared for the Mediterranean. Tends to be calm, but there's a lot of like unexpected swells because of the weird coastline. And so I had been struggling for a while, and had been taking a lot of medication that made me quite drowsy. And at one point, it rained, and I thought I was tough shit. Also, being sick and drowsy from the medication, I didn't really want to get up. So I just thought, I can handle this. And I just sat there with no protection in the rain, and got hypothermia. So I was removed. I was removed from by speedboat, and I thought that I would be allowed. I mean, I went without a fight because I thought I would be allowed to return, and they decided that I was too sick to return, and that resulted in some fighting. And then like 2 days later, they were intercepted, and it absolutely killed me. But all that drama aside, I mean, Israel treated my comrades awfully. The Ben-Gvir had already said that they were going to be put into, and by the way, this was not part of the Samud flotilla. The Samud was about, I think, 3 days. They were intercepted like 3 days before or anyway, less than a week before the Thousand Madleens was intercepted. But Ben-Gvir had already said that he was going to put flotilla people into terrorist prison, and with the exception of the couple of crew members we had that had dual citizenship with Israel, and they went to civilian jails, I think almost everybody else did end up in Kitsoy or a similar Palestinian prison. I do know of one of my comrades on a different boat that she actually broke her leg during the interception. She didn't say that like it was an act of an IOF soldier, but when they took her, apparently another soldier asked her, "What's wrong with your leg?" And she said, "It's broken," or she thinks it's broken or something. And the soldier then proceeded to shut the jail cell directly on, or some sort of door directly onto her broken leg. So within a few days, I had been told that, most everybody is instructed to demand to talk to their ambassador, the embassy for their country. I knew Mike Huckabee's our ambassador to Israel. The American embassy has not done anything for any of the Americans on the flotilla, so I knew that probably wouldn't be helpful for me anyway. But it didn't matter because Israel, at least for the first 24 to 48 hours, denied access to any of the human rights lawyers that the flotilla had arranged for crew members. Or I'm not sure if they specifically denied or just didn't, I guess they didn't transmit the request to the embassies for the first day to 2 days. So when they say they deport people, typically, very frequently, they deport to what they call closest, safest countries. So sometimes that's like Lebanon or whatever. Sometimes it's Turkey. I think Greta had been deported last time to Paris, but it's not always. The point is that it's not always your passport country. And so most of my comrades were actually deported to Istanbul this time. So, I mean, I guess that kind of brings us through the main storyline, but I want to go back to what the point is. And I know people are interested in what happened and what it all looked like, and I will answer questions, of course, but the point is very much to bring a spotlight, especially in the American audience, to exactly how awful the situation has always been, but especially is now. So we just can't, we have to be steadfast in making sure that we continually center that. But I guess, I don't know, Amy, do you think, is there anything else I should expound on before I turn over to questions? Was that too long?
No, that was great. That was almost exactly the timing I asked of you. So well done. And questions have started coming in. So do you want to just jump to questions now?
Yeah, if you or Dorian don't have any suggestions for anything else to add to that, I'm happy to take questions. I presume, like most everybody here is really aware of the situation, but I mean, there's certainly resources and stuff that I can recommend if people want more.
Well, let's say this. You can use a chat or hand raise to everyone. I'm talking to everyone now. And feel free, if you have more basic questions that you think we're assuming you know, then go ahead and put them in. We're happy to take them and help everyone understand. So let me start here with actually, let me start with John's question. John is wondering, gives you thanks, and also wonders about the national composition of the participants and how the others looked upon U.S. tacit support of the genocide.
So mostly French. The organization was French. So it was like, I would say maybe 70% of the people there were French. Everyone spoke English. It was a requirement. And there were a fair number of Italians. There were some UK people, Belgian, Irish, actually an Irish MP who I became friends with, who might help me declare political asylum in Ireland if it gets to that. But so it was very diverse, but it was mostly French. And it was interesting because obviously as Americans, we're very, very aware of the fact that we are the primary supporters of Israel. However, they have their own gripes with their countries, and they were far more focused on their country's complicity than on America's complicity, because that's why they're there, is to deal with the narratives in their own countries that are preventing their countries from taking harsher action. And I forgot a really important piece of that, which is, by the way, it was amazing that while we were at sea, or I think it was shortly before we set sail, Italy sent one of their naval ships. Then Turkey sent one of their naval ships while we were at sea. And they were focused on the Samud, which was ahead of us. But the Italian dock workers threatened to shut down the economy of all of Europe if the Samud couldn't get through. And there were, when the Samud was intercepted, there were like these massive, massive protests everywhere in Europe. So they really are focused on the European culpability, and fascism is on the rise everywhere, and a lot of these political leaders in these countries are supporting Israel. So they were very much focused on their own and didn't really seem to care one way or the other. I will say there were some other Americans, but they were part of the mutual aid disaster relief team, and they kind of kept to themselves. They had their own boat. And we didn't really interact that much. They were a group of nurses. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, that is very interesting and helpful. Let me get to Kathleen's question, which is the mutual care. This is speaking about your training process. The mutual care that grew during your training, is that what helped people to know that you were not well and convince you to go ashore for help?
Yes. Because of course, and they tell us not to do the tough guy thing, but I totally did that. And because I really didn't, I think as an American and an American elected, even though they weren't putting a spotlight on me, I felt a particular responsibility to be strong in this and to be tough. And they had put me on the smallest boat, I think, because they thought I could handle it. And I also, especially getting to know my crew members. So there was 4 other crew members. Our 2 skippers were both French, a man and a woman, and complete badasses in every way. Was constantly in awe of their skill. Our medic was French as well. And we had a well-known political activist from South Korea on board. But and she had nautical experience as well. My nautical experience was like completely dwarfed by theirs. And the man who was one of our skippers during training clearly had the most, and it probably is because he also had the responsibility as the captain of the ship, had the most kind of anxiety about wanting to make sure that that I was taken care of, but also that I was, as the American elected, there to provide protection to that boat, because we flew the American flag, because I was on board. I brought my badge. I brought my state rep ID card. I had every intention of, hoping that my presence on the boat would help protect us from the worst types of behavior from IOF soldiers. But yes, it was very much, the medic in particular, his name was Alex, was incredibly attentive, incredibly kind. And my captain, before leaving me alone, specifically told me, do not get wet. And whatever you do, don't get wet while you're sick like this. Don't do it. And thought I knew better.
Okay, thanks. Ellen. So Brian has a question, and I'm going to actually expand it because I know there weren't any other U.S. representatives on the flotilla. Um, was there anyone else from New Hampshire?
No. The only other Americans were the Mutual Aid Disaster Relief Group, and I believe they were all from California or out west. I did, for what it's worth. I only have a good texting relationship with one congressperson, and that's Ro Khanna. And I did ask Ro Khanna if he would be interested in coming with. He declined.
Okay. Okay, Bob is wondering about the screening process. Can you tell us more about it, about what they required of participants before joining? And let me first also let you know, Ellen, that Bob just biked across the country from California back for Gaza this summer.
Yes, yes,
So
he told me about it.
Oh, good, good. So he is wondering, as I said, about the screening process for joining the flotillas.
So there wasn't really, and I'm going to only speak for Thousand Madleens because I didn't go through the screening process for Freedom or for Global Samud. I would expect there would even be a lower, I mean, it can't be lower because there was really no real physical like exam or anything like that for the Thousand Madleens. There was, God bless her. I'm not sure how old she was, but probably about 80-year-old Israeli woman with dual citizenship. Wears the scarf and the little completely covered, like very traditional Israeli woman was part of the flotilla, and she was tough as nails. Good Lord, this woman put me to shame. She'd be out in the sun in 90 degrees, just wearing everything and still, on her feet all day long. I wasn't on the same boat as her, so I can't speak to whether or not she got seasick, but she was utterly committed. So there's really no age limit or for boats like the one in the Thousand Madleens, it is physically demanding. I would think, 10 days at sea, 2 weeks at sea is going to be physically demanding for really a lot of people, no matter what you're on. But especially these small sailboats that just not that I'm reliving my seasickness, but they move a lot in the waves. Having said that, the Freedom Flotilla and the Samud both have much larger vessels that are not sail; they're power vessels. So I would imagine that that's an easier time. We did have the Conscience, which was part of the Conscience the Conscience is part of Freedom Flotilla. It is a large vessel with like 100-person capacity that's sailed alongside of us. They were originally, the Conscience was bombed back in May to the point of being inoperable, and they kind of kept it secret that they were repairing the Conscience, and it was kind of like a grand unveil surprise. They're going along. They crewed the Conscience with almost entirely with doctors and journalists. So I think the biggest thing, certainly they take activists, most of the people there, like I said, were French, but they were activists from different walks of life. There were people who specialized in art, people who obviously medics, people with nautical experience, people with different activism experience, and there were elected officials as well. But if you have the thing that will help you the most if you want to get on a flotilla is the ability to draw attention, the ability to draw press. If you have, a title and name, some connections that will, if you have a large social media following, that will help anyone get on, even if you may not be the youngest or the spryest or whatever, as long as you're ready to do it, having that pull will get you on, I think.
Okay, interesting. There was a comment in the chat from someone who did apply but felt maybe she didn't have enough experience or with the boating. But it's good to hear that you think there's a variety of things they're looking for. So it's worth completing.
Most people, there were people with nautical experience. Most people did not have nautical experience.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
And especially, I don't know if the person applied to Thousand Madleens specifically, but especially with the Samudin and the Freedom Flotilla, where they're operating much larger vessels and people aren't expected to be crew members. We were all crew members. We were all actively, actually manning the boats. So
okay.
We had to be.
Great. Let me ask, I'm going to skip around with these a little bit. I want to put this one out there. Sheila wondered if you're the only American who has ever participated.
No, lots of Americans have participated in various flotillas over the years, but the only elected that we know of. I'm almost positive I'm the only American elected official.
Did you have any trouble getting back into the U.S. after this?
I was very concerned that was going to be a problem, and maybe if I had actually gotten arrested and detained by Israel, that might have been a problem. I actually delayed the Thousand Madleens announcement until after I was over the ocean, because I didn't want problems even with security leaving the country. But no, I didn't. They didn't. I did have a problem, but it wasn't because of like the TSA being instructed to detain me or anything like that. It was there was an error on my ticket with my name.
When you came back, Will is wondering, have any New Hampshire media outlets contacted you about your experience? And have you, well, if not, or in any case, have you reached out to them?
So I haven't reached out to anybody. I'm honestly like the worst at that kind of thing. I have barely a social media presence, and what little social media presence I have is because I have a volunteer who does it. So I've just, this is going to sound stupid for a politician, I've just never, ever been good at like promoting myself or touting myself. I just literally like policy, and I really feel strongly about it. But when I was there, obviously there was the New Hampshire Journal article, which was a bit of a hit piece and kind of insinuated I was a terrorist, or kind of low key insinuating I'm an anti-Semite. And then there was a Seacoast Online piece, which I never read actually, because I was busy, that came out when I was training. And he said he wanted to interview me when I got back. I let him know that when I got back, and I haven't heard from him. So other than Arnie interviewing me, I have not been contacted by press, which is really sad because, I went into this fully, like I really made a serious decision when I did this, because it wasn't just, I'm going to be gone for a long time and this is dangerous, I could die. It was also, if I don't die, I could lose my job, which I did lose my job. But I could also, I was going to, no matter what, even not losing my job, I was going to lose weeks and weeks of income at a time where my husband, who I separated from for 2 years, but he got a sudden disability, so I had to move him back in. Plus, my elderly cats are declining very rapidly, or one of them is declining very rapidly, and all these other things happening, cars breaking down and everything. And I was giving up income and potentially giving up my entire job, and who knows what else in terms of like political ramifications or whatever. So I made this decision well beforehand, and I sacrificed because I thought it was super important to get an American elected official, in hopes that we could get more press, in hopes that my presence there would encourage other elected officials like Ro Khanna or whoever to do the same thing. And it was kind of nothing. And I knew that was a possibility with American media, but I was hoping for more.
Okay, wow, we have a lot of questions still coming in. I'm going to let Kevin ask his. Kevin, you should be able to.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you, Ellen. I wanted to ask, now that you are back, do you have plans of how you're going to continue to be committed against genocide? And do you have recommendations for us of how we can effectively be active against genocide?
Thank you. And can I just disclose, quite separately, Kevin came to me before I even knew he was part of this group, to have me put in an animal welfare bill. So I'm doing that as well. So thank you. I mean, I struggled with this question, right? So yes, I'm obviously committed. Actually, before I even got back on U.S. soil, I signed up with the Global Samud. So hopefully I'll get a call whenever they plan their next wave. I also signed up with Eyewitness to Palestine. Eyewitness Palestine is the name of the organization, and they have people from different walks of life that have different kind of not just ability to get eyes on the situation, but also different, like whether it's artistic kind of view, or there's a psychologist going to kind of study the mass trauma that these people are going to have to live with for the rest of their lives. Doctors, nurses, things like that, but just different aspects to get them on the ground there so that they can literally bear witness and show the world what's going on. So these are all really great and excellent organizations that are doing important work, but it's, obviously not everybody can go to Palestine. I think we've seen the impact of the videos. I mean, the videos motivated me. The videos motivated the people who did go on the flotillas, right? So I'm terrible at social media, but to any extent you can help promote. There's individual families that need help, that post in various places, but help promote the awareness. That is actually a lot, because it is actually turning the tide. The flotillas, when the Samud got intercepted, and there were naval ships with them, and there were mass protests in Europe, that was the pressure that kind of forced the quote unquote peace deal. Now, I personally, and I imagine many of you agree, I believe that the peace deal was a complete sham. As you know, I think something like 300 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since, even as the ceasefire was taking effect. But since the ceasefire, they aren't, it was a sham. It was a way for Israel to kind of get rid of that international pressure. But the point is that international pressure existed and can exist again. So I think, pushing the real lived experience of Palestinians and the history of the actual facts. I think particularly in America, if you have nothing else to say to someone who's generally just pro-Israel, just saying, why is it that we are spending billions of dollars helping them bomb kids, even if you believe that that's an okay thing to do? But why are we spending billions of dollars instead of paying for our people's health care when Israel has socialized medicine? They have virtually free, almost free higher education. They have social services that we could only dream of here. And yet, even as a right-wing, authoritarian, theocratic ethno-state, they have those things. Why are we foregoing those things for our people to help a genocide over there, even if you think that they're all terrorists and it's okay to kill children? Why would you do that? So I think pushing that, particularly with Americans, is important. I think, the videos, it honestly was one, I remember the first video that made me cry. And that was It was a video of rubble that just the building had just been bombed, and these people are desperately searching for a child that is lost in the rubble. And it was interspersed. It cut between these people looking for this child and the words of Israelis talking about like killing children and how it was fine and kill them all and we don't care that they're children. And it went back to the people searching for the child. And I don't know if the child ever was found, but these Palestinians uncovered this little kitten who was still alive. And they, as they're searching for their own child, one of their own children in this rubble, they lifted up this kitten and was praising God that the kitten was safe. And it just was that juxtaposition that they had more compassion for a kitten than Israelis had for human children, that like just tore me up. That we can be so utterly inhuman. Like I'm agnostic at this point in my life. I used to be religious or faithful or whatever you want to call it, and I've left that way of thinking. But the closest I've come to thinking that there's supernatural forces that work is being confronted with the evil that Israel, like just the pure hatred that they've indoctrinated their people into believing, and the cruelty. It seems metaphysical to me. Like it seems that there must be extra forces at work, because how could human beings be like this? So anyway, we will never live down as a species, as a planet, the fact that we watched this genocide live streamed and the nations of the world did nothing. I think that is probably the most moving thing that people can experience, is seeing it with their own eyes, hearing the callousness and cruelty of the people doing this with their own ears. And anything you can do to get that in front of people is probably the most valuable thing you can do if you can't actually be on a boat going to Gaza. So sorry, that was a long answer.
It's okay, Ellen. Thanks for answering. I'm actually going to pull one from Facebook Live. How has your experience impacted your ability to influence or impact people here in the U.S. to get engaged with supporting the Free Palestine movement?
Well, I mean, so obviously the people, I honestly think it's a little bit insulated, because the people who know I went are people who are staying aware of this, right? Like I said, I was hoping to get more light on this, more of a spotlight, didn't get the coverage in the media that I wanted. So the people who have asked me about my experience, or asked, the people who know that this is something I did, are people who are already aware. This is really after the welcome party and the, just interacting with a few of you in front of the State House when I happened to be there. This is the first kind of engagement on this topic I've done. So it's been insulated. It's been an insulated community. And I wish I had a better answer. If any of you have a better answer for how to break out of that, then please let me know. But it does seem to be the same. When I was organizing professionally here, it's like the same, like 200 activists that just keep circulating in New Hampshire, that leftist activists. And it's hard to break out of that.
Well, maybe folks here can help out by forwarding this video to people they know once it is out there, which it will be after tonight.
Or not maybe the whole video, but like little snippets that, if anything's powerful, but probably not even like me. Like, again, the videos of the situation in Palestine, in Gaza, and now of course the West Bank, which is going to be the next Gaza. That I think is much more moving than anything I can possibly say.
Okay. John was wondering, what about, you're talking in general, but what about your fellow representatives? Do any of them know that you went on this, and are they
Oh, yes,
supportive?
they all do. They all do. It's been interesting because honestly, no one seems to want to ask me about it. I mean, a lot of them have said thank you, and a lot of them have said wow, or you're so brave, or whatever. Just kind of, but like drama amongst representatives is kind of like white on rice. It's just it's just a soap opera nonstop there. But they all do know, specifically because of that NH Journal article coming out, and kind of vaguely accusing me of being a terrorist and anti-Semitic. The Republicans I've run into have kind of been weird and awkward around me. The Democrats, not awkward, just kind of like appreciative. Generally, there might be a few kind of Zionist Democrats that have kept their distance, but generally appreciative. But no one's like, wanted to like pry details, I guess. And honestly, we just on Friday was our deadline for legislation, and I was, out straight with was going to be 18. I'm down to 16. I had 16 bills I had to finalize all on by Friday, and yeah, I think that the soap opera is continuing and leaving my little drama in the Mediterranean behind.
Ellen, are you willing to stay a few extra minutes to get through these questions? Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. This is not our regular Monday night series when we're very strict about the 8 p.m. So great. I'm going to ask another John Vale's question and maybe expand it a little. What he said was, can we assume email distribution of organizations and application requirements, contact info, costs, etc.? Essentially, I think the larger question is for folks who have wanted to apply and haven't even figured out how to, can you tell us where to go, what to do, how to get in the loop?
Sure. So, I mean, the websites themselves are easy to find. That's how I initially applied with Freedom Flotilla. I've sent 2 letters because I was hoping to be in Turkey anyway. I have Turkish friends I was planning on staying with. And so I sent 2 emails, one to the Freedom Flotilla Turkey or not delegation, but email address, and the American one. And it was actually the Turkish one that saw my information, saw that I was an elected, and it forwarded it to the Americans, who then forwarded it to Thousand Madleens. So there's a very obvious website for Freedom Flotilla, and I also applied through the Samud after I was done with Thousand Madleens, so that was pretty obvious as well. I think that they all get like a lot of applicants. So like I said, I think it's only because the Turkish people saw my application that like it kind of came to the awareness of the Americans. So I'm happy to reach out to my contacts if anybody specifically wants to sign up for the next one. I also don't know when the next one is going to be because the quote unquote peace deal, they're letting some stuff in, but that was never, just to be clear, like getting humanitarian aid to Gaza was like what we were trying to do, but that wasn't the point. The point was to break the illegal blockade, the blockade that has been declared illegal 17 years ago, and create, specifically with Thousand Madleens, the focus was on creating a sea corridor for others to get aid into Gaza. I will say, I don't know if anyone saw this or if everyone saw this, but when the Samud was apprehended, it took up enough resources from Israel that that for the first time in years, Gazans were able to fish their own waters. So they had a brief reprieve from not being able to go out into their own sea and fish. So that's an unintended but wonderful consequence as well. But yeah, the point is to break the blockade, which is not just illegal, but also illegally enforced. And so if anyone wants to sign up, I will do what I can to put you in touch. I also want to go back. So,
Well, I would be very excited to have a New Hampshire contingent go. That sounds really wonderful.
a whole
So yeah,
contingency from it. Yeah.
yeah, and so if folks, want to reach her, maybe they can write to Doreen and I at New Hampshire Peace Action, and we'll make the connection. Does that sound good, Ellen?
That sounds great. I mean, maybe we get a list together and I approach the flotilla orgs with, hey, we have this whole group that wants to go, and collect like a list of like the list of all the different like skills we have amongst ourselves, and assets, and whatever we can offer.
Awesome. And of course, some of the folks on the call, I'm sure, are not from New Hampshire, and we're still happy to help people make the connections. Let's see. Here are a few that might be quick. Where were you taken when you were evacuated?
I actually ended up going all the way back to Italy, and then eventually made my way to Turkey after being sick for a week in Italy.
So I have two connected questions here. One, I think you've answered, will the flotilla movement keep going? I think we're hearing yes. And then Kathleen followed up with, what is the status of the next flotilla? But I think maybe you've pretty much covered. There is definitely a plan for more. I want to say
there's definitely a plan for more. I am fairly sure Freedom Flotilla and Samud are planning next waves. I am positive, I know for a fact, internally, Thousand Madleens is planning a next wave, hopefully with more ships than the 9 we set sail with. So there is, because there's still a blockade. That's all, it's an illegal blockade. And I can go into the legal, reasons of that. It's illegally enforced, even if it were a legal blockade. And until that ends, there will be flotillas. I don't know about the timing for any of these next waves.
Okay, great. Mike has a broader question. You mentioned this earlier, and he wonders if you could say more about your comment that fascism is on the rise everywhere. He's wondering if you have thoughts on what factors are causing that.
No.
Okay.
So yes, I have thoughts, and everywhere is it's definitely an overreach, but it does seem like an ungodly number of countries' leaders seem to have this tendency now. And, part of me thinks, well, America's a trendsetter. But the truth of it is that, and if you would just permit me to be rather divisively political, although I imagine I'm amongst safe people, the truth is that capitalism always leads itself into fascism. It is the end result of late stage capitalism. That's what happened. That's exactly how Hitler came to power, was capitalists desperately trying to protect their wealth against the wave of socialism from the communist parties that was taking over. So capitalism itself is like all of our structures, it's hard for us to kind of bring our brain out of. We're so much in the water of dominant structures, but capitalism is a dominant structure, what we used to call patriarchy. It's not really about men in power. It's about historically what we've considered to be masculine values controlling every single one of our institutions, every single one of our systems. And so instead of values of, nurture and caring about each other and cooperation and mutual assistance and communication, it's competition, domination, kill or be killed, be the best, and these are the values that underpin all of our systems. And money being the most powerful power, really, it having it underpin economics in the form of capitalism means that eventually, when it comes time to, it will eventually devolve, and when it comes time for capitalists to protect themselves against the workers and the consumers that have been pushed to the brink of supporting radical change, of supporting systemic change, when people have finally gotten to the point that they cannot live and they're finally ready to support systemic change, then that's when the facade of freedom falls away and they will enforce their power. Sorry, that was kind of esoteric, or not esoteric, I guess. I don't know, maybe it was kind of philosophical and maybe divisive, and I'm sorry if, like, not directly related, but it is directly related in that all of these things are dominant structures, and capitalism, fascism, Israel's genocide, all of these things are basically the repeating. It's a nonstop. All of human history has been a nonstop repeating process of just the same story, which is a small group of people in power coming up with ridiculous reasons why it's okay to deny power and resources to a certain other group, whether that group is based on religion, race, sex, nationality, whatever it is. That is all of human history, from the Crusades to to slavery, to all of it. And I think it's kind of, we are as a species getting to the point that we're starting to become aware that we can't do this anymore, that this is not working for anyone, that we really do need to get back to what's in, running systems by human well-being, or just, conscious well-being. And that threatens power. And I think that's why we're seeing fascism everywhere. Sorry for that.
Don't be sorry. We asked for your opinion and you gave us your opinion. That's totally cool. I might need to send you a book that looks at a little broader human history. So it gives us some examples that are where we've done better than that. But we'll talk about that. It'll make you feel better, I think.
10,000 years ago, they were completely egalitarian societies. But yeah.
Yeah, we've been in a rut for a while.
We've been in a rut for a while.
How about that? I can agree with that. Yeah. Let's see. Will is wondering, did you ever hear from members of the flotilla to know specifically how they were treated? You gave a couple examples, but have you heard more and been in touch with the folks that you were on the boat with who, have shared how they were treated?
I have been in touch with we're all in a giant group chat, which is so active, and I've been very active in the chat, but it's so active, and I had to focus on bills that I muted the chat, and I think I'm like 500 messages behind at this point. So I am in contact with everybody. They didn't share a lot of the stories of their treatment. So one of the two Israelis that were on the flotilla that had Israeli citizenship, they were taken to a civil jail. And this particular man was accused of being a drug smuggler. And I think that they just use all these kind of crazy charges to coerce you to sign the document. For most people, that document is that you're not going to return to Israel. For them, it was that they couldn't leave Israel for a set amount of time, but it wasn't that long. It was like a number of weeks. So they had all these crazy charges against him. He shared those stories. We had a wonderful nurse whose name is Lee, out of Wales, who has been in Israeli prison like 7 times. He's done several flotillas and also just went there as a medical volunteer. And he shared various stories and actually reenactments of the singing that they would do while they were in jail. So, I mean, that's really the only stories I can think of off the top of my head. I think they just all kind of got back home and just kept moving forward. Like there wasn't a lot of dwelling on, oh my God, this happened to me, and oh my God, that happened to me. It's been, the narrative in the chat has been very much like, and what's next? They've already organized in their various home countries protests, rallies, art exhibits. They've done so much just since getting back.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to let Kathleen ask her question directly.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Ellen, you said about being an animal lover, and I just wondered if you could say more about that and how that propels or how that factors into your fight against genocide.
Thank you for that, because there is a connection. I mean, and I mentioned that video that first had me like sobbing was the juxtaposition and the fact that these people who are called cockroaches and they're called terrorists and they're called disposable and everything, that these people have extraordinary compassion for cats and animals in general. So I think this, again, this is one of those questions where you're going to ask me, I'm going to give you my personal answer, which, you know, does not reflect on any other organization or entity. But I think that if something is capable of suffering, then it's morally repugnant to participate in the suffering of that thing. Like the suffering of an animal suffers the same way a human suffers. If you're afraid of death and you're filled with terror, that's how an animal feels. We are animals. All of those same like biological processes that cause terror or pain or whatever in us are going on in them. And sometimes their perception, like we are so stupid that we don't even understand that they perceive things that we don't. We're constantly dismissing the intelligence of animals. But there's so much evidence of this like incredible intelligence of animals. They just found out, like literally last week, I saw an article that scientists for the first time are realizing that whale language, whale song, is as complex as human language and has about this, encodes about the same level of complex information that we'd have, which is mind-blowing. And yet we still like, oh, they're just different. They're beneath us somehow, but we treat other humans like that. We can't seem to learn our lesson to stop committing genocide. We can't seem to learn our lesson to stop oppressing other people or stop making up excuses. Oh, women are just built different. And before that, it was, though, you know, Black people were just built different. And all of these pseudo biological arguments that just give an excuse to oppression. I don't see animals as any different than that. We know they suffer. We know that they, you know, have cognitive thoughts and are capable of so much. I mean, I have a parrot. I think sometimes people are like, well, they don't talk like human beings, so they're not, like, that's what's separating us. But my parrot literally knows what he is saying, right? Like he knows. So that just tells me that it doesn't even matter if they talked, because there's human beings who can speak just fine, and yet we can't seem to get out of oppression. And I guess my closing thought on that is, and like, please separate the art from the artist, but the sequel to Ender's Game, written by Orson Scott Card, or I might be butchering his name, but I read the sequel, and this was a few years ago, and I apologize for butchering the author's name. It's called Speaker for the Dead. And so in this sci-fi world, there's the human beings have explored, you know, the galaxy or whatever, and found other species, and they've separated these species into what they call Raman, which they consider to be like intelligent species with like consciousness that they will basically treat like other human beings, so or whatever, and Varels, which they consider to be beast-like and kind of not worthy. And I should go get the book just to read the quote, but the point is that the theme of that book and like the takeaway of that book is a quote in their fictional kind of spiritual tome, which is basically the distinction that we make between Raman and Varels, beings that are worthy of being considered like us and beings that are other, says far more about our maturity than it does about their maturity. That what we are talking about when we label an entity or a being or a species as Varels, not the same as us, other, is our lack of ability to see them, our lack of ability to be mature enough and wise enough and smart enough to understand them, not their lack. And so, I mean, this is exactly what we've done to each other throughout all of human history, whether it's against indigenous people here, or indigenous people on the other side of the planet, or women, or people who just look different or believe different. And it's never really about that. It's always about power. So that was another weird answer for you.
Thank you. We appreciate hearing from you. I have one more question for you, and it's a personal one, so you don't have to answer it. But Bob was wondering what job you lost and have you found another? So Bob's concerned for that.
Thank you. So I used to, two things I used to do before I got elected 10 years ago. I taught adjunct at community college, and I also worked in nonprofits. And since being elected, I had to fall back on my CDL and being a bus driver, not school bus. I used to drive transit. I drove for Boston Duck Tours for a few years, and then I was recently working for a charter bus company. And the reason I had to fall back on that is a few different things. One being that the timing works out, nights and weekends, so that I can continue to legislate, which means I've sacrificed my 30s to my 40s, the earning potential that I had that would have normally, had I continued with the career, been able to get me into a house. Instead, I'm stuck in this really small, tiny, bad apartment for 16 years. But the other reason I did that is because the nonprofit work and the legislative work there is, in fact, some cases where it's a conflict of interest, but and violates ethics, but it's too much of the same work. It's too much of me giving from my own time at home, and the same kind of coordinating people and trying to convince people and like that. So it was really, really, really draining, and I didn't have any moment of my life that was to myself. So working for driving buses, you never bring the bus home with you. You clock out, and it paid the bills. I am interviewing for another job tomorrow, but no, I have not found another job yet. I did. So when I got the leave of absence from my job, and they approved it, and then I told them what it was for, and they kind of indicated it would probably be a problem, but I went ahead and they just kind of didn't bring it up until I was done with my leave of absence. And then when I got back, they let me know I was terminated. So it was basically like they kind of almost implied that they were admitting that it was about the flotilla. That was not the official reason. They said that there was a problem with my driver record, which was not true, and I proved that it was not true, but then they were like, it doesn't matter. So I applied for unemployment, which hopefully I'll be getting soon, and it was approved specifically because their rationale or their reasoning that it was about my driver record, and I showed them no, the problem that they said existed didn't exist. And so I got approved for unemployment. So hopefully I'll get pretty soon a little bit of money, but thank you for being concerned. It's been quite difficult lately.
So thanks, Ellen. We are going to wrap up now. Yeah. So I just have a few things to say before we end. First, just thank you, Ellen. Let's do a visible thank you. We'll do it again at the very end, but here, let's start with that.
Unnecessary, thank you.
Well, it's heartfelt. If it is heartfelt, I can tell. And then just a few things from New Hampshire Peace Action. We are happy to take donations anytime, nhpeaceaction.org/donate to keep our work going. We also really want you to stay in touch with us and know what's coming up and join us again, nhpeaceaction.org, and we're also on Facebook. And here's a few things coming up. Our Just Peace in the Middle East vigils continue Wednesday, that's in a couple days, November 26th, 2 to 3, we will be outside of Senator Shaheen's office in Dover. And the Concord Vigilers will not meet this Thursday, but next Thursday, December 4th, noon to 1, they will be there again. Our next Peace and Justice conversation is next Monday, December 1st, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to be hearing from David Grishaw-Jones about the 2 months he just spent in May and June in the West Bank. And then 2 weeks after that, December 15th, we are going to have David Blair tell us about the community peacemaker team that he just came back from that was in Iraqi Kurdistan. So continued look at folks who have really gone, really stepped up and are directly helping people. Which also, let me announce to you our New Hampshire Peace Action book study for the winter. It starts Thursday, January 8th at 7 p.m. We're going to have 6 sessions, and it's going to be of the book This is an Uprising. It delves into the movement of protests and peacemaking, and with an eye to strategy and how we can get better at it. And also note that you can catch up with, you can share this one, and most of our Monday night programs are on our YouTube channel. So look for that. Watch what we've had, pass it around to others, keep this information going. So again, I want to thank our co-sponsors actually first, Not My Name New Hampshire, Southern New Hampshire Indivisible, UCC Peace with Justice Advocates, the Palestine Education Network, Jewish Voice for Peace, American Friends Service Committee, Veterans for Peace, New Hampshire Council of Churches, New Hampshire Youth Movement, World Fellowship Center, and 350 New Hampshire. And then again, big thanks to Ellen. Really appreciate you doing this. We've all learned a lot, and I think hopefully folks have been inspired to keep on.
Thank you.